Thanks for joining us this morning. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Wednesday, April 8th. Live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min. Before we dive right in, these are the stories we're following at this hour. South Korea will not be giving any visas and is halting visa waivers to countries that have entry bans on Korean nationals. And to control influx of imported cases, foreigners with non-essential purposes will not be allowed to enter South Korea. The World Health Organization is China-centric, says Trump, blaming the UN health body for issuing bad advice during the COVID-19 pandemic. He said his administration will be looking at the U.S. funding for the WHO. Plus, just 7 days to go before the polls open here to elect lawmakers for the 21st National Assembly. We tell you what's different in this year's election. We begin this morning with the latest development here in the nation. South Korean authorities are tightening the country's entry restrictions as a way to control the influx of imported cases. The prime minister, during a daily coronavirus meeting, said the government will temporarily stop visa waivers and not issue any more visas to countries that still ban the entry of Korean citizens. Here's Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun during a pan-government coronavirus meeting this morning.
While maintaining the basis of openness, the government will boost entry restriction in accordance with reciprocity. The government will also expand entry restriction on foreigners traveling without pressing purposes.
Now, the move comes as Korea had been seeing more imported cases of coronavirus. The prime minister also added that decision will be made later on whether to implement electronic wristbands to allow authorities to better track the movements of people self-isolating over COVID-19. On a more positive note, it has emerged that 2 elderly coronavirus patients here in South Korea made a full recovery after receiving blood plasma treatment. Health authorities here say plasma treatment guidelines will be announced within days. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
South Korean researchers have proved the effectiveness of blood plasma treatment on coronavirus patients. Doctors at Yonsei Severance Hospital in Seoul administered plasma therapy on 2 elderly coronavirus patients, a 67-year-old woman and a 71-year-old man. They were treated with plasma from people who had recovered and have developed antibodies to the virus, enabling their bodies to protect themselves from the virus attacks. One of the patients was discharged after making a full recovery, while the other is said to be sent home soon.
The patients continue to suffer from acute respiratory distress syndrome, even after antiviral treatment. Then we decide to go with the plasma treatment in combination with steroids.
Plasma is a yellowish blood fluid you get from centrifuging blood. It carries various nutrients, including protein as well as antibodies. Antibodies, which are Y-shaped proteins produced by the immune system, stop intruders from harming the body. These invaders, called antigens, can be viruses, bacteria, or other chemicals. Antibodies also enable macrophages to engulf viruses and bacteria. The South Korean government says it will soon provide detailed guidelines for the treatment, which was also used to treat patients during the MERS outbreak.
The guidelines for plasma treatment are nearly done, and we will swiftly commence research on other means of treatment.
For now, it's crucial to secure enough plasma from people who have fully recovered from COVID-19. The government also needs to prepare for possible side effects, as no large-scale clinical trials have been conducted yet. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization has been on the end of relentless criticism for its slow response to the COVID-19 outbreak in the Chinese city of Wuhan and its seeming bias towards the Chinese government, despite the stream of misleading information Beijing put out at the outset of the crisis. One person who is fed up is U.S. President Donald Trump, and he blasted the organization, calling the UN agency, quote, very China-centric. Our Kim Sung-min reports.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
When the World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 a pandemic, the number of confirmed cases around the world had already surpassed 110,000. But up until then, the WHO had consistently blasted countries that banned travelers from China, saying such measures merely increase fear and stigma against Chinese, all while having little public health benefit. The organization also failed to provide coherent guidelines regarding the issue of wearing face masks as a protective measure against the virus. Breaking his relative silence on the issue on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump had some harsh words for the agency. He blasted the WHO on Twitter as, quote, very China-centric, despite the agency being funded largely by the United States. President Trump said it was fortunate the U.S. rejected the WHO's advice on keeping their borders open to Chinese visitors. He further blasted the organization for giving a, quote, faulty recommendation. During his White House COVID-19 task force briefing on Tuesday, he went a step further, suggesting he might freeze U.S. funding for the WHO.
We're going to investigate it. We're going to look at it. But we will look at ending funding. Yeah. Because you know what? They called it wrong. And
however, a report claims the Trump administration also failed to take sufficient countermeasures despite knowing the seriousness of the outbreak. The New York Times reported Tuesday that President Trump's trade advisor Peter Navarro warned the White House about the risks of the coronavirus in early January. In his note, Navarro said a full-blown COVID-19 pandemic could infect around 100 million Americans and cause up to 1.2 million deaths. Asked about the report on Tuesday, President Trump said he had not been shown the memo, but he heard Navarro had wrote some projections on what could unfold. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
As the world grapples with the coronavirus outbreak, the United States says it will provide an additional $225 million in health and humanitarian assistance to further support the global response efforts. And Washington's top diplomat says a move comes as the virus does not respect borders. Here's U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Tuesday.
I can confirm that we are prepared to commit an additional $225 million in health, humanitarian, and economic assistance to further boost response efforts worldwide. That's on top of the roughly $274 million in funding we've already deployed to 64 countries across the globe.
And Pompeo added the funds will be used for testing, prevention, and control of the virus while bolstering health systems in countries battling outbreaks. However, the U.S. will keep critical medical supplies given the domestic demand in the United States. The World Health Organization is warning countries against easing coronavirus measures too quickly as cases continue to tick up, especially in Europe and the U.S. But in stark contrast to that advice, the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the pandemic originated from in the first place, the citywide lockdown has been lifted for the first time in over 2 months. Our Kim Jae-hee with the details.
The World Health Organization has a new warning about the coronavirus pandemic. In a virtual briefing Tuesday, WHO spokesperson Christian Lindmeier said one of the most important things is to not let go of measures too early in order to avoid another wave of outbreaks. This comes as the virus continues to claim more victims in Europe. Deaths in the UK rose by more than 800 in a day, the largest daily jump so far. France's death toll topped 10,000 after a spate of deaths at nursing homes. Italy, once deemed the epicenter of the pandemic, is showing a welcome downward trend, but still confirmed more than 3,000 new cases on Tuesday. These numbers come as UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who tested positive for COVID-19 a couple weeks ago, was moved to intensive care on Monday after his symptoms worsened. He was admitted to hospital after persistent symptoms just the day before, a move Downing Street said was a precautionary measure. In the U.S., New York State on Tuesday recorded its biggest one-day increase in coronavirus deaths, bringing the total to almost 5,500. This accounts for nearly half of all deaths in the U.S. Russia reported over 1,000 new cases on Tuesday, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to around 7,500. But in a stark contrast to the rest of the world, the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the virus had its origins, business is back to normal from Wednesday as a months-long lockdown was ended for the first time since January. That means road, train, and other rail connections have now reopened. China reported 0 deaths on Tuesday for the first time since it began releasing figures. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
And despite the world battling out against the virus, North Korea continues to claim it has 0 confirmed coronavirus cases. Now, this is according to a WHO representative to North Korea on Tuesday. Now, the official told Reuters that the North has tested 709 people as of April 2nd, which included 11 foreigners. The official added that North Korea continues to test for COVID-19 and has more than 500 people under quarantine, but no infections so far. Other than North Korea, countries like Lesotho, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan and Yemen also claim to have no cases. Shifting focus, we are just 1 week away from polling stations opening for South Korea's 21st general election. Now, one big change in this year's election is the introduction of a 50% mixed member proportional representation system aimed at diversifying the National Assembly. As a result, for the first time in South Korean politics, large parties have created the so-called satellite parties in a bid to grab even more seats. Our political correspondent Kim Mo-kyun tells us more.
South Korean parliament consists of 300 seats. 253 are elected through local constituencies, while the remaining 47 are chosen through what's called proportional representation. But as per the electoral reform bill passed in late December, which introduces a 50% mixed member proportional representation system, the way in which these 47 PR seats will be distributed has been altered. Before the changes, the regular system reflected a party's voter turnout in relation to the 47 PR seats. But with the new system, only 17 out of the 47 seats will follow the existing system. The remaining 30 seats will be distributed based on voter turnout in relation to all 300 seats, then subtracting the number of the local district seats they obtained and dividing the difference by 2. The new system was introduced in order to diversify Korea's National Assembly, which has been dominated by the 2 largest parties. But the then main opposition Liberty Korea Party, now part of the current main opposition United Future Party, strongly opposed the decision and launched a satellite party named Future Korea Party. The ruling Democratic Party followed suit, launching the Civil Together Party. These 2 satellite parties are only putting forward candidates for the 47 proportional representation seats, which will eventually allow them to grasp more seats as they plan to merge with their satellite parties after the election. An expert in the industry says the launch of satellite parties diminishes the initial motive of better distributing PR seats to minor parties.
Initially, the new PR system was introduced to make a party's seat proportional to the percentage of its votes in order to bring change to Korea's 2-party-led parliament. But with the launch of satellite parties and the scaling down of the number of seats affected by the new system to 30, the purpose of the PR system has been lost, and the situation has become worse for minor parties.
Following the adoption of the new PR system, 33 other parties are running to clinch proportional seats during the upcoming election, making this year's ballot paper the longest in Korean history. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Good morning. It's going to be a very dry day today. In fact, Seoul has been under a dry weather warning for 8 straight days now, and the humidity level in Seoul could drop as low as 15% by mid-afternoon, and that's nearly 4 times lower than what many experts say are healthy levels for around this time of year. And by the afternoon, the numbers will be a couple of notches lower than yesterday, hovering in the mid to upper teens in most parts of the country, with mainly clear skies overhead and plenty of sunshine. So readings will be hovering slightly lower than the season norms for next few days. And other than parts of Gangwon-do province and Jeju, the rest of the country will continue to have sunny and dry conditions. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the globe.
And that's our time at this hour on Arirang News. But we'll be back in less than an hour with the daily coronavirus briefing by the South Korean government coming up at 11 Korea time. So do join us again then. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.